Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Siouxland Senior Planning. As always, I'm Ethan Huizenga, attorney and owner at the Huizenga Law Firm PC, and I am your host for this week's episode. On this week's episode, we're going to answer a couple more listener questions. This time, we are going to cover the questions of, first, do you have to have a certain net worth in order for a trust to really work for you? And also, can anyone benefit from a trust? Or maybe putting that another way, is it possible to use a trust regardless of your economic situation? And as with most things that we do at Huizenga Law, the answer to both of these questions is kind of an interesting one based on the individual themselves. So if you were to come into our office, one of the first things we would want to have a conversation with you about would be, what is the purpose of the planning that we're trying to do? We talk about that from a lot of different perspectives, but we're really wondering primarily, what are you concerned about? We talk about protection a lot when we do estate planning. Sometimes that's protection from probate, and we want to avoid the probate process. Sometimes that's protection from creditors, whether that's your children's creditors or potentially your creditors sometimes. Specifically, we do a lot of work trying to help people protect assets from long-term care costs and making sure that we can pass those assets down to their children rather than having to spend them on care they might not otherwise want to spend the money on. So if you're concerned about something in particular, if there are things that are on your mind, issues that you think you'd really like to try to avoid or solve, that's the first area of conversation, the first topic of conversation that we're going to cover as we try to navigate the process, the choices of which kind of estate planning document you should use as the focal point of your estate plan. Remember too that trusts aren't the only tool that you're ever going to use. Trusts do a very specific job. They play a certain role within a comprehensive estate plan, but there's always going to be additional documents that you need depending on what, again, those goals are or those concerns you might be trying to address are. So because trusts are a useful tool in estate planning, we really tell people that there's not really a financial limit or a monetary value that you need to have. Your net worth doesn't need to be a certain size or a certain amount in order for a trust to be an effective tool for you. Using a trust in your estate plan is more about accomplishing the right things. So the answer to the questions is, it really doesn't matter what your financial situation is. A trust can benefit just about anyone. Now, sometimes you don't need a trust. We talked about that on this show. But in those cases, the real reason that the trust doesn't benefit them is because they don't have a goal that requires or that maybe a trust is the best tool for. They don't have a goal that requires using a trust or that a trust would be the best tool for. So whether your goal is to protect your home and life savings from long-term care, or whether you're just trying to avoid probate, a trust could be the right tool for your toolbox as long as accomplishing that goal is important to you and important enough to invest a little extra money in using the right tool instead of taking a shortcut. Because of course trusts are not simple in the sense that there's kind of a lot to setting up a trust. So monetary value of your estate isn't necessarily the defining factor, but you do want to make sure that using a trust makes sense for you financially from a cost standpoint. And if you're considering that, you should talk to an attorney about not just what the cost is, but figure out if that's really even the right tool, because just making the decision based on cost is not the right answer. But if the cost is a factor, then you should certainly explore other options. That's all I've got for today. Remember, trust can be used by anyone as long as your goal involves something a trust can solve. If that issue can be solved by a trust, then a trust is the right tool. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.